Hello YouTube, my name's Sean Connors and welcome back to Outsiders. Now this particular video is an AV video 5, it's campaign design. It's probably going to be split into probably 2 to 3 parts. So it might be AV 5A, 5B and 5C by the time it's all said and done. I never realised until I started to do this video that it was going to be so complex and be critical in the chain of videos that I was planning on doing to get it absolutely right. So I will probably need to break into 3 parts. So part 1 will just cover off the initial notes and a little bit about genre. Part 2 I expect, maybe even a little bit about the setting. Part 2 will probably pick up about published settings and so on. But we'll cover that and see where we are with each piece. But here goes. So where we've left off the videos from before, we've talked about the system. Now obviously we've now got to talk about campaign design. Now there are 2 methods when you campaign design. We've touched on these before, but I haven't done it to this depth. You've either got off the cuff or you've got from the ground up. Now a campaign created on the fly starts most likely with a single adventure, generally run in the default setting. You don't really think about it too much, you just run it, and then depending on how the players react to it, you adapt it, you add more on, and then your next adventurers build accordingly. It becomes very organic and the campaign grows as well. So you don't have to worry as a GM on 2 major things. You don't have to worry about NPCs, any locations. That will all come as the game unfolds. And equally, it helps you with prep time. The negative side of doing this is that it's got to be something that you enjoy doing, and I suppose that's one of the key points here. If your preference between building from the ground floor up and ad lib will very much depend on a GM by GM basis. It's whatever you want to do. I'm at a point where when I GM, I'm doing pretty much both. You may well find that you do both, but you might find that it's just one style or the other that you prefer. So again, it's no one's particular taste or preference is any better or any worse than anybody else's. It's whatever works for you. At the end of the day, it's what entertains your group around that table, and that's the point. Because with off-the-cuff stuff, you can tailor it more and more to players' taste, and we've already spoke about how critical that's going to be. On the other hand, some of us, of course, are better at advanced planning and thinking on our feet. The internal consistency and vision of a grand plan may be more satisfying than the meandering feel of an improvised campaign. I think that's probably a very valid point. Planning also can stop us falling back into using the same NPCs, the same sort of fighting styles, the same magic spells, the same cliches, and you'll know when you're doing it because your players will turn around and say to you, "Here comes Bob the shopkeeper again," or "We know what's going to happen here," and you'll know that you've fallen into that trap again. So sometimes, even when you're ad-libbing, a little bit of forward planning can go an awful long way to stopping those cliches. It's conscious forward planning as opposed to unconscious planning, which makes no sense really, does it, when you think about it? But it does in an odd way, because when you're an ad-libber, you don't think about it, just do it. I suppose the other part to being off-the-fly specialist, someone who can do that stuff, ad-lib very well, is you need to keep quite detailed notes, because that's going to be very, very important to the continuity of your campaign world. All things being equal, you want to take into account with both playstyles, of course, your player taste. So whether you're building a campaign from the ground floor up, or whether you're ad-libbing, you really want to be thinking about what's going to get the best bang for your buck with the players around your table, what's going to really get their interest. Sometimes I suppose it's not just a matter of whether you've planned, but what sort of prep work you've actually done. Thinking in terms of things like tacticians tend to distrust elaborately plotted campaigns because they feel they're being driven to a centre point or a certain location, no matter how adroitly they scheme. At the same time, they favour deeply detailed worlds and grow and change independently of the PC's actions. If you think about other types here, the more control a player prefers over the continuing storyline, the happier he'll be in an improvised campaign, which is really going to suit your power gaming type players. Method actors may likewise feel constrained with tight plot lines that fail to address their character's motivation and goals. Storytellers may enjoy the grand sweep of an overarching story that's well planned and thoroughly thought through. So you can see how they relate into the both styles of the campaign design and what that will do for you. When in relationship, you look at the 2 videos as a whole. And you need also to think about genre. Now, we've already talked about a little bit about this, but it doesn't matter whether you're improvising or planning. You'll need to decide which type of action-adventure your campaign will fall into. Often it's just a case of your chosen set of rules dictate the genre. If you've chosen a rule set that supports multiple genres, yes, you could pick whichever one you want for your personal taste, but it's probably better to throw the question open to the players and see what grabs their attention, but be prepared for the fact that they will most likely give you as many answers as you do have of players. The other thing as well is that you may come into a situation where one of your players will turn around to you and say, for example, if you wanted to run a type of anime type game, Japanese anime type game, and one of your players is a really good player, is really adamant that it's not interest them, and you realise you're on a sticky wicket with this because this could be a can of worms where several players just aren't interested straight away. So you drop the idea. One of the easiest ways is to go back to the default setting. The default setting is, in my view, the setting that I would use over and over again is to use a fantasy setting. If in doubt, use fantasy. Several reasons why. One, it supports a very wide range of play styles. And the second thing is it allows you to, it's very pliable. So if you had an idea, say for example you were going to run a cyberpunk game that had a virus within your known world, how easy is that to switch it without players knowing? You just change it. It's a magical curse in a fantasy world. It's the same thing that you're interested in. It's just a different way of getting the same result. You're carefully and skillfully giving the players what they want, but at the same time gaining what you need. Remember, it's that classic, you compromise sometimes your own personal standards, but still gain what you want. But remember, the small parts that all the players play can be greater than the whole, and that's what campaign design is. We think that's the whole thing, the campaign design, but the small parts can be greater than that. Together, it can elevate it to a huge level, a level that, when you've been at that point and you've seen what it can achieve, you just want more and more of it. And that's something you'll constantly then thrive towards once you understand it and see it in action. And some of you out there, I'm absolutely convinced, will be doing this stuff anyway, and probably be able to share more of your thoughts and instincts around it with a video of your own, which would be great. But I'm highlighting it here because I think there are a number of people who have never seen this or thought of it in this way. So I'm trying to show it and illustrate it, some of the greater understanding. And I hope that this is doing the job and is making sense. So, player taste may point you towards a genre for your group that will sign on for straight away. If you're heavy on power gamers, you may need to pick something wild and quite woolly, where your characters routinely perform superhero acts. You may need to hold off on your game of realistic military action until you've assembled a gang of mostly tacticians. Likewise, a game of Machiavellian court intrigue should probably wait until your storytellers vastly outnumber and method actors vastly outnumber their butt kickers, or you're in for a tough ride without a shadow of a doubt. The other thing that both these things can bring really is, I think probably the easiest thing that they can bring to you is a great sense of satisfaction no matter which style you go down, and we will touch on that as the video unfolds in greater detail. I'm going to quickly touch on the setting and then bring part one of this video. We'll call it AV5.1, probably very apt in light of recent role-playing games. We're just going to quickly talk about the setting for a moment or two. Obviously, by this stage, you'll have chosen a setting, whether it's your own, whether it's one that's going to be a published setting. The next step is to work out where the action will actually take place. If you're working on the fly, really it's just a simple case of a few notes, some illustrations, and away you go. Serious planners may wish to extensively have notes on both the world and the general area in which the first few adventures are likely to take place. Now, I think we've got just enough time to touch on this, so I'll try to. I want to talk quickly on published settings. Many published settings provide many published games provide a default setting, often one portrayed in great detail over many supplements. Sticking to a pre-established setting has its advantages. Firstly, it's much less work for you. Reading supplements is much quicker by a mile than actually writing the damn things. And another factor not to be underestimated is the degree to which published settings are readily understandable and therefore appealing to players. You may find it easy to recruit new players if your games are set in an established and popular world. People can only take in a certain amount of information on any one sitting at your table. Players can learn far more about a setting by reading the supplements over a period of months, years, whatever it requires, than you can impart in a few sessions of play. There is absolutely no shame in using established settings. Another key advantage of established worlds is that players who've read the source material bring a determined set of emotional associations to the gaming table. They've invested in the world long before they rolled the first dice, and that's huge. Plus, an established setting does something wonderfully well, which is the following: that if you've got some big bad guys, they're well known as a group or organisation, whatever it might be, because the players are likely to have read about it, as soon as you bring them into the game, even very subtly, the players will be all over it and get excited and scared and angry. You cannot do that in your homegrown setting because they won't know. Yes, you can tell them these guys are really bad, to be feared, etc. And they can accept that on an intellectual level, but to actually get them to accept it on a far more emotive level is virtually impossible, and that's what an established setting can do. So I'm going to probably come back on this in the next video, but for now I'm going to bring this bit to a close, and we'll talk a little bit more about published settings and move on into homegrown settings in the next video, 5.2. Anyway, I've been Sean Connors. This has been Outsiders. Happy gaming, take care of yourselves. Until the next time. Bye-bye.